Hey everybody, it's Baileywiki here, and here's the quick overview for the March 2023 release. This is a really exciting release as we're unveiling our first orcish-themed assets for Foundry Basic tiers. Pretty usable for anything tribal or barbarian, scenes like that, which you'll see. This is just like the Elvish, the Dwarvish, and the Castle expansions from the last few months, just in terms of like modularity and simplicity. You've got plot hooks, decor, furniture, lighting, interlocking tents, and even an entire defensive wall system. Lots of new camps and campsite prefabs just to drop in anywhere. And we also make pretty liberal use of the new overlays that I introduced last month, including a really awesome new use of overlays, tileable terrains. You'll see more later this month, but it lets you essentially generate virtually unlimited random terrains that serve as an ideal kind of launching point for scene design or just making very compelling sort of on the fly scenes. Speaking of which, you have about 11 new scenes to really show off what these assets can do. Foundry Advanced tiers are actually getting two major updates. The first is the 3D update with new props and new prefabs of dungeon rooms and working lighting. And boy, wait until you see some of the new scenes from both Swift and a new artist this month. They are very compelling. You can jump to those timestamps to check them out. But Advanced Tier also gets an update to the landing page module, which has some new assets and also some new functionality and under the hood improvements that basically incorporate some of the great scene transition tutorials that you've seen from Zephyr over the last month. And last but not least, Dungeondraft tiers get all of these great new Orcish assets that went into this entire release. Everything colorable and ready for you to design into your maps. So that's it for the overview. Let's jump into the release walkthrough. Okay, so for the Foundry Basic tiers, I'm going to show you what's been updated. We're going to need to get towns updated, also District 4, Ruins and Slums. That's where all the Orcish stuff's going to live, and then Nuts and Bolts, because there's some new macros and filters that are available to you. So where it's all then at is if you go into new content under your actors, you'll find all of the new content in that compendium. Next month, this will all move into the normal organized compendiums, but you can see everything in here. There's quite a bit in this release just for the basic release. And then under scenes, if you go under down to Baileywiki city scenes, that's where you will find the new stuff as well. The Orcish release and all of the inventory scenes will be found in there. You can import them using the little arrow icon there for compendium folders. Now let's go into and look at some of these inventory scenes. First, we have some plot devices here, some plot hooks. This is just an altar. It's see-through, so it picks up whatever terrain is underneath it, makes it really effective for dropping into dungeons or other places. We've got other things like this statue here. You can double-click it to change its base, or you can even right-click it to actually change the statue itself that's based on there. You can apply those new overlay filters I showed you to make it frosty and all sorts of great stuff covered in vines. We've also got some lean-tos. I'll go into those in a little bit. Just some flexible staircase pieces in case you want to make any ingresses or whatnot from your scenes. There's a bunch of new Orcish furniture, much of which is colorable. It's also got multi-face tiles, so if you drop one onto a scene, you want to change it, it's pretty easy to do that. And like I said here, just an example of how a lot of the stuff is colorable, so you can set it up to match your scenes. I call it Orcish. It's also tribal. You can use this for a lot of different types of things. These are all tables that you'll see embedded in some of the new tents, but I also separated them so you could throw them in other scenes. Here's a bunch of pieces of a campfire. And the way that these work, well, here's, more kind of like seating and stuff like that you saw earlier. But the way the campfire works, I actually made a prefab out of all of these pieces. And if you, as you can see, if you left click it or right click it, it does different things. Right clicking it cycles through the base and the top image, including transparent images on the top. So you can just drop this prefab in, give it a couple of right clicks, and you can create a completely random campfire that's also functional. If you left click it, it just snuffs it out, the fire goes away, the light goes out, that sort of thing. If you need to find it, it's in all the prefabs with everything else. It's just look up campfire and you drop it in, and it uses Tagger's wildcard functionality, so you can drop a lot of them into a scene and just randomize all of them. Here's a fighting pit. I thought this could just be useful everywhere. So I made a prefab out of it. Those ladders can be removed, for example. Here's another throne that I created. It's colorable, it's interactive as well, but you can drop it into lots of different scenes. Just plot hooks to help you design a scene when you don't really have any inspiration. You just look up plot hooks and you'll find a bunch of stuff from me. Here's some pillars. These are all colorable as well, in case you want to give them a splash of color or make them look more like leather, that kind of thing. And there's just a tile set, so you just release it from its prefab and you can just drag those tiles, make them bigger, smaller, that kind of thing. Also a bunch of new lighting. They're all interactive. By the way, all of these that are in prefabs or tile sets, they tend to be that way because I've also applied like the right overhead settings and other things that you're going to want just kind of out of the gate, just to help you build scenes a little bit faster. And then some really great new Michael Gelfi audio loops. This is Orc Camp Desert, basically in the day and then at night. I really recommend, if you want to get a bunch of Gelfi Orc audio, which is really cool, sound effects and other things, I put a link in there so you can go find it. It's directly to the Patreon post that you can download it from. And then we've got this big new Orcish defense wall system. These can all be used just as tiles. I also made them into prefabs in case you want to use them that way. But honestly, just working with them as tiles is super simple. And you can see there's different versions. So there's an armored, spiked, and then kind of a regular. And the way these are designed is just really simply kind of connect together, overlay on top of each other, along with these armored and spiked versions of these towers. You've got like, the square and the round version, and you can just span them around, make them different sizes. You can see here's the half size. You can just scale them down really easily. And then these are these transition pieces that just really make it easy to throw all of these things into a scene and then just have ladders and transitions wherever you need them. So I'll do a design with me session so you can see how they work. But if I just drag this over here, and you can see it just creates a nice seamless connection, and you can have, another one sort of perpendicular to this coming off of it. And so just a really easy way to design stuff. And then we've got these orcish tents, and these are also made to be either standalone or they can interconnect with each other. Again, you'll see in some of the scenes how they do that. Now they're all red so that they can be colorable. And I even have a macro that lets you randomize like a leather color if you want to make them leathery. If they have fires in them, they're interactive. And then some of them, because they have the same form factor as, there are alternatives. You can also right click using multi-face tiles and you can get some other options there. So you can just drop them in, change the style of that particular room. And you can make these essentially like these big tents, big tent cities. You'll see examples of it. Here's a bunch of those things that you saw split out as prefabs earlier, but they do come in all of these different types and alternatives of these rooms. And like here's a bloody one, right? Just again, more plot type devices, so you can throw them in to create some intrigue. But here's how they snap together. If I just drag this prefab over here and you just get it in kind of a position that you like, it's a really easy and nice transition. I'm also using ambient doors module so that you can get that canvas sound effect. It's a custom sound effect that I added here. So you just drop them in. They're already set as prefabs. You can make camps really, really quickly. And then I also put in some of these rooms that are more kind of wood based, so you can intermix them, right? If you look at a lot of orcish artwork, you see a lot of canvas, a lot of leather combined with wood. And so that's the idea of these. With the lean-tos, you can double click them and you can change their styles as well. And then you've just got more, again, flexible rooms that when I show you in a second, they all just kind of link up, and you can make essentially like dungeons with these, right? Whole like tent cities that your players can navigate around. And then we've got this prefab for campsites, this prefab scene, and this just shows you it's all made with tiles, and all these tiles have alternatives and things to them. But the whole campsite comes as a prefab, so you can just like drag it in, and you've got all your lean-tos and your fires. These fires are work just like the ones I just showed you, where you can like right-click them and randomize them. really simple fires where you don't even have any tents involved. You can hear it's got ambient noise. And this is just a really good showcase of how you can make prefabs that have tons and tons of usability. You can delete these some of these elements when you drop them. It's so much easier to delete than to go find them and create them. They're all interactive. You've got token magic effects here with this camouflaged version, right? So you can see all of those overlays that I showed you last month that are available to you. You know, this campsite is essentially right here. It's just a prefab. I can drag it in and you'll see some scenes where I used this specific campsite just because it's camouflaged and I wanted it to be more of like a guerrilla warfare style. Again, you can always go in here and edit any of these. You can delete them. You can change the look or the color of those overlays using the techniques I showed you last month. It's all using token magic effects. And then I also made some of these towers that are actually 2-story towers, already prefab, pre-built, so you can just drop in a guard tower. You don't have to mess with, well, what's the settings that I need? And, you know, do I need a ladder? It's even got like a levels based ladder in there. It's all multi-phase tiles, so you can change, you know, the style of the topmost piece to like armored, for example. And then the last inventory scene is just a bunch of bushes. We introduced trees last time. Wanted to add some bushes that you can decorate your scenes with. And these, like the trees, also come in colorable varieties. And you can just use some of my preset macros using token magic effects to randomize their colors. So here I randomize them for fall colors, but maybe I want to just randomize the green for like a summer color. It just gives you instant variability. And you can use other systems to basically, or, you know, other macros that you make to randomize their size and things like that. Oh, and sorry, one more inventory scene. This is really exciting. These are tileable terrains. So just like the terrains I've been introducing, these are actually tileable. And these let you, essentially, if you've ever used Ripper's 3D Canvas, you can see what I'm doing here. If you watch it on the left, I'm zooming in on parts of these large terrains, and because they're tileable, I can just zoom in around and I can pan around and I can just find a spot that looks like a valley, or it's mountainous, or, you know, it's a valley that segues into, you know, mountains. And you can see with just these tiles you see in front of you, you can have almost unlimited terrain options. And I'm going to show you later this month how you can automate some of that. So let's look at some of the scenes. This one is our you know, barbarian camp. This is like a choke point where, you know, we've used some of those camouflaged prefabbed camps, some of the trees. The scene was really, really fast to put together. And I just used very simple wall techniques here. But this is how easy it is to build these. If you come in here and deconstruct the scene and start moving tiles around, you can see how easy it actually is. So, sorry, that last one was the barbarian ambush. This is the barbarian camp. This just shows the tents kind of separated, not combined, but just dragged in a lot of those prefabs that you saw just to make an instant camp, right? With lots of things to explore. You can come in here later with tiles from Forgotten Adventures or Tom Kartos or Dungeon Quill and drop those in here and start to basically build your story, right? Here's another one. This just shows, this is the defended altar. This shows some of the new overlay techniques applied to some of those tiles, like the fallen tree there and the statue. Again, just components that were based on prefabs, dragged out, and then customizable and interactive without having to remember how to do all of these settings. You can see the altar picking up the background here. That's resized to half the size that it normally is. That altar and a lot of these things can be sized up or down. Here's the fireplane encampment. This shows you some of that tileable terrain in action. This is just zoomed in on one area of it. And you can see it's pretty effective. It just gives you this sort of desolate terrain. And we've got other prefabs. Those pillars, spiked pillars, come from the dungeon set. You can see how well all of the stuff just goes in. And of course, those are token magic effects tiles that just have some fire effect applied to it. If you want to come in here and look at that back tile, you can see how it's set up, our zoom settings and things like that. And you can play around with it and just see for yourself how easy it is to change the terrain that you're looking at. Here's another one. This is the Horse Masters of the Plain. It's the idea of you're on a large, expansive plain. Maybe there are tribes that are nomadic here, but just a few tiles and a few of the same prefabs dropped in sort of quickly to make a pretty good battle map. Nice big space. You have a lot of enemies, have a lot of distance fighting, and it's all comes pre-lit. All these prefabs just drag in with all the lighting and the interaction working. And you can see there's like a sort of overlay tile I put on top to give it sort of cloudy mood. And then these are just a couple of those tiles that I've introduced over the last couple of months, just dropped in to create some variability in the terrain, but really, really simple. If you click into one of those tiles, you can see all the other options that are available. So you can come in here and start copying tiles, replacing them, changing the terrain around, completely transform that site quickly. Here's another example of how that tileable terrain works in even a scene that's not square. I've got some elevated vision, so I basically just picked a zoom in on terrain that I liked, dropped in some trees, added some elevated vision, added this little ruin over here in the corner. The idea is it's hidden in the scene, and there's a little staircase going down into wherever you want it to lead. But really easy to set this kind of scene up, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun to just, and you'll see with some macros I'm going to introduce a little bit later this month, you can just click a button and randomize that. You can see there's one turned off. It's for vegetation. You can actually turn vegetation on. You can change the scale of it so that it's not stretched out, but you can essentially add like easy vegetation to any map as well. Again, I'll give you guys a tutorial on how to do that stuff a little bit later this month. Here is the orcish wall. This is like the eastern gate. You can see some of the pieces that I've implemented. It's got some ambient sounds, like most of these maps have ambient sounds that are both day and night. But we just use some of these pieces to make a gate. You can hear the ambient doors. And this one is set up where your players or your enemies actually have a few levels of fighting that they can do on these walls here. It's got a built-in level staircase that lets them navigate up to the top and bottom. Here we have a slaver camp. This is, again, more of the pieces, and again, playing with the tileable terrain on the underside of it. These are assets you've seen, like the exploding barrel, these interactive gibbets, which you can throw your players into and they can get locked up. But you've got, different jail cells, all just assets. You've got guard towers. So just showing you more of the components that you have available, just deployed how I envisioned you doing them. But here you've got those gibbets where you throw a player in, they actually sound like they're getting locked up. And you can hear the ambient noise in the background, some of the Michael Gelfi noise. So here's an example of how you can use those walls really simply. I just used them as tiles. I didn't even use them as prefabs. I just dragged in the tiles. You can see how the transitions work, and it's pretty effective for a fast, custom shaped wall. You can't really beat it. And then I used elevated vision to make those walls actually automatically set height and things like that. But we've got you can hear it in the background, we've got our fighting pit. These are all just tiles that, you can remove later. You can change all of these things out for different decisions, that kind of thing. But then you can just see how you can place all of these tents together. You can see how they just interlock. And I'm just using just pieces of leather as overhead tiles, just as transitions when I feel like I need it. But it's pretty easy, right? So I've got this kind of explorable base. Pretty simply, here's an example of the same pieces, but without a background. You don't have to create a background. You can just create something more of like a crawlable dungeon, right? So this is this idea of, almost an orcish city where I just slapped the prefabs in here, made sure that the walls all connected up, and And you've got a pretty effective explorable map. Drop in a token and you can see what it's like for them. Right? It's very intuitive, how you navigate around, and it's very flexible in terms of how you design it as a GM. Those hallways are just the defensive wall pieces shrunk down by 50% to make them just more of a smaller enclosed hallway. And that's pretty much it. Pretty easy, right? Here's all the pieces just kind of moved around. You can see the clutter and whatnot. Here's the path to the barbarian shrine temple. And it here it is at night. Very simple to throw together. You can come in here and deconstruct it. It's only a few tiles, but both day and night version, it uses elevated vision so that your players can't really see it up at the summit. So it's a great place to stage battles, and you can drop in trees and other types of hazards if you want to. But hopefully that helps, and let's move on to the rest of the release.
New in the Baileywiki landing pages module, we have a variety of new assets, including 15 new backgrounds for you. They come in a variety of different motifs to hopefully fill in some of the gaps in the current library. There are city gates and then outdoor scenes and clockwork doors that you can use for backgrounds to your different landing pages. All of these are 1024 by 1024. They're just shown smaller here so we can show all of them on one scene. There's also some new UI elements in the form of some new dividers for using in between your different landing page elements. And we've added new talisman options for you to change out above those menu options. Seeing that in action, we have also now updated the configurator, and we can now select the background image and swap that around. So hopefully this helps alleviate some of the issues people were experiencing with having to move things out of the way to be able to change their backgrounds, and makes it a little bit more intuitive to use. Then, as we've added more sigils, we can now use a sigil menu to randomize that or select next and previous sigils until you find something that fits the theme that you're going for. And let us know if there are additional sigils or assets that you'd like to see us add into the landing pages module. Another final note is we've added a little disclaimer at the bottom reminding you to click the check mark once you've made a selection on anything. For the landing page tiles themselves, we've been able to simplify and condense them into single tiles. Previously there were two, one controlled hover actions and the other click. Now they're all combined into one to make things cleaner and easier to adjust. We've also added scene transition support. So there is a new macro that if you've seen the Automating Foundry VTT video, it has instructions on this macro. And basically what we're doing here is the first argument is the scene you're going to. The second argument here is the file path for the image you're showing on a scene transition. And then the final argument is the text you want to have appear. This allows you to customize the experience of navigating to a new page pretty heavily, adding some style, flair, and individuality to each of these different transitions. And if you're not using scene transitions, don't worry. Activating these tiles and macros without scene transitions will still take you to that scene. If building your own tiles and you need to reference these macros, or you just want to take a look at how they work, they're housed inside of the Baileywiki Nuts and Bolts Macros Compendium. And they are entitled the Scene Transition Full Flex, which gives you 3 options here. There's descriptions for you to understand what the macro is doing and how it's working, with some annotations on each line so that you understand what's being changed. There's another macro for creating scene transitions without changing scenes that you can take a look at as well. That's going to do it for this month's update on landing pages. Stay tuned for a updated tutorial as well.
Hello troops, Swift here again to go over the 3D portion of the update for this month. Starting with the props, we're filling in a few gaps in the roster this month, starting with a wide variety of rocks of different shapes and sizes. These rocks can be littered around to add some variety to a scene, but they're also smooth enough to be used as walls or even floors. Kind of stack them up overlapping each other and you can get some pretty believable rocky surfaces. The next part is a bit of an extension on the nature side of things. We've got a set of deciduous trees with matching stumps here. And then these ones over here that I'm calling the conical trees. So trees in general are just a great way to fill out the background of a scene or break up large areas. And using the asset browser, you'll be able to select all of these and then place them down in naturally varying scales and so on to get some really believable randomness for your scenes. Behind those, we've got some more foliage, some large leafy plants and bushes. Previously, I'd made the plants grayscale so that they could be tinted to any color you like, but now with the color change shader, theoretically that shouldn't be necessary. It seems to work well, but if people prefer, I could see about adding in the grayscale ones later. Let me know in the comments if that's the case for you. Back here, we've got a few extra bits and pieces. Fences to add some more flavour to outdoor scenes, rugs to add flavour to indoor areas, a watchtower with a destroyed variant for any time the party wants to attack a bandit camp or similar. And between those and the plants, we have a bunch of lighting objects, lampposts, lanterns, braziers and torches. And these are going to come in very handy, as you'll see shortly. In the case of the lanterns and the lampposts, you might notice they are doubled up. These are lit and unlit versions of each of them. The unlit version, as you can see, can have shadows cast on it and looks, well, not lit. Whereas the lit version in the back here is self-illuminated so that it looks like there's a glow coming from behind it, which means that it's much more believably a lit lantern. It's harder to see here in the daytime, but it's more obvious in dark or nighttime scenes. Speaking of, this month we're also starting to make prefabs from all these assets we've been making. The way prefabs work, for anyone who isn't familiar, is that as part of the Baileywiki 3D module, we include a compendium full of NPCs, and if you drag one of these NPCs into a scene and have the token attacher module installed, it spawns a prefab construction of some sort, like these corridor junctions, for example. These NPC tokens here are the control tokens, and the pieces will follow them around. For example, if, I move this token down and to the side, then the corridor follows with it. They'll even rotate around if you hold control and roll your mouse wheel on a token. So you can arrange them into any orientation. With this first set, we've got some basic dungeon pieces, corridors, junctions, that sort of thing, and some rooms here as well. But probably the prefabs are going to save the most time are these ones over here for the lights. These work the same way as the other ones. Move the token around to move the prop, and it also brings the lights with it too. In the case of these lanterns and these torch poles, the prop is actually at the token's feet, so if there's anywhere that you want a lantern to be, like say the top of one of these walls, you just move the token over, and bam, you've got a lantern sitting on wherever you want to place it, with the light already set up on it and configured. Similarly, all of these braziers and torches also have lights set up on them. They've got a light on them to actually cast the light, and then another light on them to do the particle effect. Once you've got any of these in the right place, you can use the token attacher UI here to detach things from the token using this detach all elements button, and then you can delete the token and just have the prop left in your scene. This should make lighting your scenes much easier, something that's quite important for the look of a scene in 3D. Speaking of, let's take a look at some of this month's scenes. So to start off, we've got this derelict sanctuary. Obviously, how you decide to use it is up to you, but my general thought for this was it had once been a place of rest for a particular group or order of some sort, but it has lain disused for so long that the building has started to collapse, like inner walls being missing and shattered wood being scattered around the place. Even the old dirt paths outside have started to grow back over with grass. There is still some sign of habitation. For example, there's a bedroom here with a table that's been used to block the door, for example, but there's more signs of that sort of thing down below. Speaking of, this staircase here has been set up using Monk's active tile triggers and Tagger. So if there's a player token nearby and the player clicks on the stairs, then it should teleport that token down to the base of the stairs, which is in a different scene. So after clicking the stairs above, the party will end up in this room here, and they'll find signs of much more recent habitation. There's even food to be found that seems relatively fresh. Incidentally, if you wanted to do your own thing with any of these scenes, like for example if you wanted to change up the stuff that was in here, I've included a version of these that are unfurnished, so you can throw your own asset down in here and have your own theme going. So anyway, we've got a dining room here, a kitchen, bedrooms, some sort of master bedroom here with a study, and of course, a secret wall that leads through into a secret room with an altar and some chairs. Presumably something of import goes down in there. We also have over here, of course, another small storage room, and then some more stairs going down. These work in the same way as the stairs upstairs. A player token that's nearby can click on this box here, and then their token will be teleported down to the bottom of the stairs, which we'll just go look at just now. And down at the bottom of the stairs we have the crypts, a very narrow, claustrophobic and dark environment. To the right is a storage room, absolutely packed with crates and barrels. Particularly aware adventurers might realise that there's a passage behind the barrels, but perhaps not. Over to the left we have the start of the crypts proper, meditation rooms with braziers here that lead on into sarcophagi rooms that emit a faint green glow. The party might encounter undead here, or some kind of cultists, or perhaps the place has been overrun by goblins or something. Beyond this is a room with more supplies and cages. Someone or something is being kept down here. And further on still, well, that's some trouble. So this arcane circle here has actually been made using the new effects browser, which is this button here on the sidebar. And what this is a library of special effects that can be placed down anywhere in the scene and projected down onto the floor or the walls. And in theory, this is mostly used for like spells and effects and that sort of thing, though you can use them for static decorations like I'm doing here. This circle might be a little bit overt for you, for your use case for this scene. If that's the case, it is just a tile like anything else, so you can select it, move it around, shrink it, make it darker, or even just completely delete it, of course. Anyway, in the other direction, we have some more ominous sarcophagi, more cages packed into these tiny rooms, and then a central chamber with a brazier that has not yet been lit. Perhaps it's awaiting one final thing. Perhaps the adventurers are going to bring it to them. The party might have been able to sneak in here from the other direction if they spotted the door through the barrels, but possibly not. They might be able to use that as a quick escape if they need to leave in a hurry. Also, as I said, I've included some unfurnished versions of these maps for you to drop your own ideas down into. I'd love to see what you all come up with for these. I've just got the sort of the general layout for each place set up with a couple of lights in here, so that it's just plug and play with any adventure really. Anyway, now for something a bit different. This map here is the City Bridge, a narrow passageway between two buildings. That is the first map of ours that's been made by Violet. It's rather snazzy, I'm sure you'll agree. Currently it's a bit dark, but over here, tucked down behind this building here, are some invisible objects that the DM can see, with some green and red buttons, and if we click those, we've got some matte-enabled lights lighting up the alleyway here. We've got some torches down below with some fire and lights to illuminate the street. And then we've got some braziers up high on the roof with some sneaky-looking rogue types standing up beside them, ready to ambush the party. The default version of this map is, of course, this night version, but I've also made a daytime variant of it for anybody who wants to do some broad daylight street fighting, something we can all enjoy. Something I absolutely love with these is the washing on the lines. This has all just been made with tiles that have been placed here and then textured. But they look rather convincing, especially from a distance, to make it really seem like a lived-in city. The second map that Violet has put together for us this month is the Lava Bridges map. What used to be some great stone structure is now crumbling into the lava below, but some bridges remain intact. In particular for this one, we've got two drawbridges, each one with a pair of levers that will raise it up or down. We can see the semi-transparent ones here because we are the GM player here, but the normal players would only be able to see the completely solid one, so it's quite a seamless transition between bridge being up and down. Very effective. And of course there's another one over here with a nice arena here in the corner as well for some sort of dramatic showdown also got a rather clever use of the environment here. The HDRI, that is to say the environment casting light down on the scene, is actually a lava texture from in the 3D Canvas compendium, which has really kind of given the whole thing a very fiery atmosphere, even beyond the fact that there's lava all over the ground. Another map here from Violet, the Dragon Cave. Another creative use of the environment here, taking a terrain piece and turning it upside down and using it as the ceiling of a cave and then hanging stalactites down from it is a pretty excellent idea and not one that I'd had myself for sure. This map here is a slope leading down to this underground lake. There could be something important in this lake or something dangerous or both. Plenty of room below the water here for something to lurk. This last map here is one I actually really like. It's another one by Violet. It's very simple, but it's such an idyllic looking place with these ancient stones, the grass and the trees. I particularly like the bird shadow floating around. It is of course being cast by a bird that's up here. Sometimes the bird will appear static, but it should appear to be moving to the player, such as a minor glitch with 3D Canvas at the moment. There are definitely some more examples of doing creative things with the tools in 3D Canvas. This sword, for example, just a regular sword that's been scaled up and given a stone texture. This troll here, covered in a mosaic or a tile pattern. It's either a petrified creature or some huge work of abstract art. Either way, a pretty interesting centerpiece. And then this flat clearing here, which is a flat piece of terrain that's being put on top of or partially under a more undulating piece of terrain, means that there's loads of room in here for any sort of combat encounter that you might need. Overall, this scene would be excellent for quite a few different types of encounters. Very simple, very effective, quite like it. Anyway, that about covers it for the assets and the maps. In the coming days, I'm going to be doing the February roundup of 3D Canvas features, and then the March roundup shortly after that. And then after that, I'd like to do some more tutorials for a few of the more advanced features in 3D Canvas, particularly the interactions with Monk's active tiles, Tagger, and Token Attacher, since there is a lot of possibilities you can attain with those modules. I had some requests today for props, and that was actually really helpful. So as ever, I am open to suggestions as to what sort of things people need more of, and also for what kind of things like maps people would really like to see made. Drop a comment down below or on our Discord if you have any ideas in that regard. But for now, I'll see you all later.
For Dungeondraft this month, there are new assets in the Baileywiki Assets A pack. This is the Orcish release, and you can see a heavy focus on leather, bone, and other rough elements for creating Orcish or otherwise outdoor or post-apocalyptic type of environments. A lot of these are already in action in Foundry VTT, and now you can get your hands on them in Dungeondraft. These are all going to be under the BW Orcish tag, and then they have their own subtags as well. As a part of adding in this Orcish tag, we've also gone ahead and added the BW Dwarvish and BW Elvish tags, although these mainly contain ornamentation elements from previous releases. To start things off, we have a variety of different bindings made out of rope that you can use for indicating different mooring lines or places where things have been lashed together, as we've done with this bone circle over here. And there is a wide variety of different bone pieces, including creating bone tent rings that you can use yourself or you can kit bash together. And all of these bones have both static and fully colorable options, giving you a ton of flexibility. There's also a wide variety of bone spikes and pieces that you can use to create a variety of different structures or add a more brutal flair to your fortifications. Another really fun element of all of the bones are these giant skulls that have been created. There's 2 different skulls with a variety of pieces, including horns and interiors, that you can use to mix and match and even use these as dwellings or domiciles. And every piece is available in a colorable version as well, and has a corresponding shadow overlay that you can use for creating depth within your maps. So we look forward to seeing what you come up with using these skulls. All of these assets can be found under the BW Bone tag. Under BW Structures, we have a variety of new spikes that you can use for, again, modifying fortifications, and all of these have static versions, colorable versions, and then shadow overlays for adding depth. And there are also some new walkway pieces in a curved and straight variant, and all of the individual planks that make up those walkway pieces. So you can kit bash your own walkway or use those for other aspects. And these shadow overlays are very helpful for creating that depth when you are creating walkways over top of different pieces. And those are going to be under the BW structures tag once again. You can also find them in kit bash materials wood. Leather is a huge part of this release. You can see there is a wide variety of leather pieces. Every shape and design here has both a clean and a ripped version to show some wear and tear. And within that, each of those versions has a colorable version and a shadow overlay, allowing you to really get detailed and creative with all the different pieces. You can use these to create additional awnings like the ones we have here already, or you can use it for other kinds of kit bashing and set dressing. And just like their complete skin counterparts, these awnings and tents have clean and ripped versions with colorable and shadow versions and their own supports as well. You can find those in BW Leather. There's also a new modular chair that uses leather, bone, and furs. It has a variety of different options here, including this undressed and then a leather and fur version. And all of the components are completely modular, and they work great with the existing library of Baileywiki modular chair parts, so you can mix and match these to your heart's content, whether that's just changing up the colors on individual pieces or mixing it in with other chairs. You can find these in the Baileywiki modular chairs tag, as well as the appropriate kit bashing pieces. There's also a modular bed that uses furs and leather as its bedding material. There's a variety of different colorable options if you want to just drop something in on the go, or you can get fully custom and make your own bed. You can find this in the Baileywiki furniture tag. Finally, we also have a variety of new paths. There are 2 new bone paths, one that looks kind of like the exterior of the skulls, and another that is a spine. And both of these have a crisp shadow path if you want to have a shadow that follows more exactly. Further down in the Paths tool, you will also find a metal wall made out of blocks of iron, and this is going to be in between the magic writing and ornamentation paths. And just like the rest of these paths, it also has a crisp and clean shadow path that accompanies it. Below the ornamentation, we also have a rope path, which is fantastic for using with those bindings and kit bashing objects together. We have a rough-hewn stone wall, a path of that wooden walkway from before, which is really nice for creating more flexible shapes, and a 4th wooden palisade. And each of these has their own shadow path that matches exactly and has a really nice clean look to it for adding depth to your maps.
So that's it for the release this month. We really hope you enjoy it. And for those who support us, thank you for letting us create with you and for giving us the space to innovate and educate within this community. Let us know in the comments or Discord or Patreon where you'd like us to go next in terms of assets or tutorials or technology. And in the meantime, keep an eye out for another fun contest this month, some more tutorials, more innovations, and in the meantime, have fun making your maps.